relatively complicated sample preparation flow before sequencing, and then there is also the analysis of all of the information that is coming out of the machine. Now, in order to be able to run this complete flow, today you basically need to have a complete organization with trained people that run this whole thing. And I visited some companies. They basically tell me that it takes maybe 1 week to run the instrument, but there is a 4-week queue in order to just prepare all of the samples. And then once the data is ready, it takes them another 6 weeks to process the information. So there is a great vulnerability there, and Jay Flatley, the former CEO now of Illumina, kept saying that the Holy Grail is a complete sample-to-answer flow. And Illumina actually made several acquisitions in that area, but they still have not come out with an instrument in that space. On the other hand, QIAGEN, which is a company that is as large as Illumina, but has a much better presence in the clinical space, they did come out with the Gene Reader, which is a completely integrated platform where you put in basically a sample and you get actionable data at the output of that machine. Now, that machine has its drawbacks in terms of accuracy and throughput, etc., but it has a lot of things that customers actually need and want. And so I think that there is a great vulnerability that the market segment that Illumina can address is going to shrink as companies actually deliver a complete sample-to-answer systems. Okay? Now, so this is in terms of the workflow. Now, I think that nanopore sequencing is the really big elephant in the room, right? So, just very briefly, just in terms of technical specifications, today every cycle, every base that you read takes, let's say, on the order of 1 to 2 minutes. Okay, in the Illumina, and the same thing in the Thermo Fisher platforms. So we're talking about minutes, and therefore the total sequencing time is measured in hours and days, okay, depending on how many bases you actually read. In nanopore sequencing, the time to read a base is measured in milliseconds. So that is a completely disruptive technology in that industry. Now, everyone knows that it's disruptive. There is one small problem: it doesn't work. And the reason it doesn't work is that it's too quick, and it has a very high error rate. And when you actually look today at the time it takes you to prepare the sample and how many passes each molecule needs to pass through a pore in order to get to a sufficient confidence level, it's still not a complete game changer. But if, there is a lot of money that companies like Roche are pouring into this, and Oxford Nanopore is another big player. If someone is going to be able to solve this, this can really kill Illumina, because, I always say to be better than the market leader, you don't need to be 2 times better. You need to be 100 times better. And nanopore sequencing is 100 times better.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what is the time frame for that, you think, when that starts to play out?
It depends who you ask, right? So the nanopore sequencing has been under development for, I think, at least for 10 years, at least. And every year they say, hey, this is the next big thing. Now, in the last 2-3 years, there really have been significant improvements. And for me, improvements are not press releases. They are, scientific articles that demonstrate results from sequencing platforms. And you do see now that in the last few years, maybe 2-3 years, yes, they did start coming out with real data. Now, and they are selling those instruments. So those instruments are now finally selling. Over the last year or two, they started selling them. I don't think that they are displacing Illumina yet to a large extent, but in the very least, they're going to catch a niche in the market, and if they do deliver, then they can really make a dent in Illumina's market presence.
Okay.